Hello, chess friends. This is International Master Valero Levov, and today we're going to be talking about isolated pawn and some of the most important subtleties which come with using it, and of course playing against it. So, like what you have to know and what you should actually remember. So let's get started. This is a game that I'd like to show you. Play between Vladimir Kramnik, one of the greatest chess players, and Vishy Anand, two ex-world champions. In fact, that game that they played is probably the most illustrative way on how to take advantage of an isolated pawn. In fact, when you're playing with it. So White played very well. He got his development good. Then he castled short side a6, bishop to the b3. Exchange, and then there's knight at the c3, bishop e7, bishop to the g5, and then after short castles queen d2, there is bishop to the c2, and then after b5, queen f4. Now as black played rook to the a7, you actually did the move rook a to the d1, bishop b7, and actually what's very interesting, after bishop to b7, then there was d5, and this is the moment where you realize what the isolated pawn really brings. The isolated pawn brings a lot of setup, a lot of control, a lot of resources around the center. And then because of that, because of this control, it provides a beautiful breakthrough for White. It just gives him the chance to break open, to really attack, and give himself the necessary tactical resources that he actually needs. d5 is beautiful. Now, are there other moves to be played? Yes, like rook e1 or knight e5 or even queen h4, but the truth is that a move of d5 actually pushes open and breaks open the whole line of fire for White. The rook, the knight, the queen, the bishop from c1 to advance against h7, the Darsko bishop on the g5 as it is, and it's just kind of awesome. In fact, black played bishop takes d5 because the other moves just aren't too good. And now, so after the move d5, in case black played e takes to the d, queen h4, h6, white could do bishop takes h6, busting open. Like this whole idea was based on the fact that white is doing a great job with his center. See, the isolated pawn could not be attacked, but yet it provided white with a great opportunity to advance, attack, and keep black under a severe pressure in such a position. This was great to see. A really beautiful tactical line to follow up with. So the thing is, white is really breaking through, and he's doing it beautifully in this type of position. In fact, actually after the move of knight x to the d here, then queen h4, h5, white plays rook f e1, then that does the move of g4, and he really opens the whole thing. He just opens the whole king side in order to take down the whole area out there. It's a beautiful variation, and it's a really just an excellent possibility to follow up against the opponent. And so after h takes to the g, rook c8, bishop takes to the c, takes, take, capture, and then there's rook to the d6. And in fact, actually after that type of a move of let's take a look in this. In fact, actually this is a very important move, very strong. So the whole thing is, white used that pawn to break open, and really now he has a very successful possibility. In fact, alright, it's a lot of good pieces. Many of them are being beautiful and incredibly strong the way they stand forward, and that's what just happens in this position. It's like a very good tactical sequence and an idea to help out the pressure. You see, like this is a great way to go. I mean, of course, that after knight to the g5, king g7, then there is the move knight takes f7, rook takes g6, the trade, the exchange, and like there is very little that in fact black could do to fight back. He just loses the a pawn, and things go bad. So the whole thing is now white is winning, but because he actually had the opportunity to advance so effectively against the opponent. Alright, so let's take a look at another instructive concept and what you have to keep in mind. In this game, it was played between Paul Benko and Mark Taimanov. It was a very instructive example, actually, in a game. White started and played quite well, I have to admit, pretty decently. Then after castles, there was c6 to the d and bishop g5. Exchange, knight c3. Now, this example will show you exactly how it is used, how the position of that kind is used so effectively. I mean, what White did was this great, easy, straightforward development. He has the chance to jump in and attack on the king's side, and it was great. But he, instead of this, he actually did something different, which was super cool. The point behind it was just, let's advance on queen's side. Let's just go ahead and really bring all the other pieces into the battle. And in fact, after that, this is really great. And in fact, actually, that was a very effective direction. After a6, a4, knight f5, b5. Now, I feel like the move of b5 didn't have to be played, although it's not a very bad idea. It's actually interesting. So b4, then this one is, in fact, after that move, it was like this variation, bx to the c, bx to the c, e3, h5, and then there was this. And I gotta admit, you know, it's like, it's not a bad idea, but you have to understand, like, what White did in this case was a minority attack, starting with less pawns. Now, I don't want you to get confused. Pawns versus more pawns. Now, a lot of people will be like, oh, Valerie, I don't know what you're talking about. But the reality is, yes, you care exactly about this. You like to start with less pawns versus more pawns, because then when you exchange half of the pawns, the remaining one or two by the opponent will be a really good target for you to go after and attack. If you start with less pieces against more pieces, you will always be unsuccessful because you can't attack him with less pieces. But when it comes down to pawns, it is a little different, and the White is able to do brilliantly in this type of position. And you see, like, just like this is like a very, very good thing. The come forward and so the most important thing that you just like to do is to figure out advanced impossibilities. White's keeping up the pressure. He has his own task. He has his own agenda on the queen's side, while Black is terribly behind. And that's what White does. b5, keeping up the pressure, holding the tension against the Black position, and then slowly arranging, or as we get to call it, rearranging the pieces in the plan in this type of position. So it's like, that's the variation that we can do in this moment. So this is what we gotta go for. See, so the most important thing is to figure out how to go ahead and like really advance in this type of position. So you see, the interesting part is, like, first and foremost, get ready, bring the pieces, and set them up against him. The whole thing is, I mean, like, you know, White just got up there with the g4, and then, you know, the weakness that he created on the queen side on the c6 was beautiful, because it actually forces Black to stay down and defend himself instead of actually doing something more useful and precise on the other side of the board. And that is like the real deal. In a lot of occasions like this, you'd like to make your opponent to defend. You would like to make him to start, you know, like, this is the whole idea of a flank attack, of a minority attack. You can exchange a lot of pawns and leave one or two of your opponent behind, so he's got enough to worry about them. And the truth is, Black is in trouble. I mean, that's the whole idea. It wasn't really about whether that was good or not, like what's going on. It's just, okay, Black's got the c6 to worry. Most of his other pieces are just not really all that good, and things are going terribly wrong in a short while. So the whole thing out here is that when the Black Knight comes down to e7, then White plays h3, and now we realize that the big weakness within Black's position, the c6 pawn, is, or has become, the worst part of his position. The worst part is the pawn on c6. The worst part is the fact that every single one of his pieces, of Black's pieces, are just completely on terrible places. And that's just really the beginning. I mean, there is nothing that black could do that will actually feel right. And so the whole thing in this case is just like after h3, knight g6, queen to the c2, and of course we have a great setup and an opportunity to advance against the opponent. It's a great shot over c6. Black plays bishop d7, knight c5, a rook b1, and a5. Then the rook comes down to b6, which is a great idea. And then, of course, there was the move of bishop to the d3. Now, bishop f1 and bishop d3 is great. Although, in fact, that's what you have to understand in that type of position is that it is very necessary to break open. It's really, really needed in order to just, advance and attack against the opponent. So it's like this is a very, very important thing. What you have to do, let me tell you, it's like open, breakthrough. White actually wanted to keep the pressure, which worked out pretty well for him. But yes, the whole idea is minority attack leaves your opponent with a weakness, and then what you do is that you open up the position in order to give it the whole tactic or ideas to really threaten, and that's a great position. So let's take a look at another example. In this next position, we're going to see two grandmasters, Konstantinopolsky and Frank, handling an opposite castle king's position. Now, what's so important about this is that given the character and the different possibilities for each side, it is very instructive. It's very interesting to see how each side really gets going and moves ahead against or towards his opponent. So what we see is that White's doing a pretty good job. He's got some nice possibilities and pieces around the king's side, although Black has the same sort of thing. You'd really like to advance and get going and move in to attack the opponent. So the question actually is, oh right, where is White gonna go now? Now you have to understand one thing about these type of attacks. The one thing that we care about most is who is faster. This means the rest doesn't matter. Speed to let the opponent, to allow yourself to open up your opponent's position faster is the only real thing that matters. It's the only real thing that ever makes a difference in these positions. So what does that exactly mean? Well, Black starts with a4. And his intention is ultimately to just open up and then attack pretty quickly. That's what he wanted to do. Open the position and go fast, or go faster and try to be successful. However, the interesting part is that White does f4, and we realize that he's got very much the same intention, but he is going to execute it in actually a bigger way. What White wants to do is to move the pawns directly in front of the Black king side and sort of open him up as quickly as possible. Now, why would I say that this is such an important deal? Here's the thing. When the opening of the position actually happens, there is no way for someone to just stay solid. Things are definitely going to happen, and things are definitely going to change, and they're going to change pretty quickly. This is why you have to understand that on many occasions, and I mean really on many accounts, it is super, if not to say absolutely necessary, super important that you think how to get two things: more pieces and more open lines directly versus your opponent's position. This is going to make a real difference. After 8x to b, 8x to the b, and then b5, Black wanted to do this fast. Unfortunately, his attack was deprived of power. And what I'm trying to say is that even though his bishop looks good, and the challenge to b3 just actually looks fairly decent, there is just no immediate way on how he will, really threaten or do something. After the move of bishop to the e6, White actually continues with the move of h5, and it is of a considerable importance for White to attack the Black g5 pawn this way, g6 pawn this way, because then if he doesn't black will just get a free opportunity to take b3. With this move, things go a lot easier. We have the ability to attack. We're getting the chance to threaten. Rook d to the g1 could be just as easy. And you realize the scary moment here. A lot of the pieces are just going to come up. A lot of the firepower is going to help white to strengthen and really build his play along this side. It was a good move. In fact, black played bishop takes to the b3, whereas white goes with rook d to the g1, and now you see black is trying to push his attack further versus the majority of white's incredible pieces on the king side. And however we get to look at that position, now it doesn't really matter that much, but however we get to look at it, you understand it doesn't matter. For black, it is all over. It's a long time ago. White plays f5, which is just a beautiful, like a really good way to set the attack in motion. Now with the g6 gone, there will be very little that black can do against the upcoming threats. There will be h6 and similar moves. It's really going to take a couple of moves only to get the attack or the threats going. And actually, that's just quite powerful, and the opponent can't do anything that's good. And you understand after g takes f, there's going to be a really nice tactic. Step by step, things go bad. Well, black, it's not to say that black didn't try. He did queen to the queen out there, but then after this, white played bishop to the d3. Now, I don't want to say that white or black played perfectly, but I just wanted to show you how effective it was for white to really gather so many pieces and open up the necessary files instantly against black's position. And just a great version to see this attack work out so powerfully. Next, he won the rook, and the game was over. There is another very interesting concept that I think is very important, and that's the concept of outposts. Now, the problem is that a lot of chess players do not realize what concepts are really about. So basically, the key is you need to understand what an outpost is, and you need to realize the different ways and how you can occupy or control one in order to feel better. So the first thing is, this game was played between Aaron Nimzowitsch and Lajos Steiner. It started off pretty well. Black developed quite nicely. He got his knight up in the play. He did fine in the start. And then, of course, right after that, white plays bishop b5, d4. Now, black's development was a little passive as he chose to push the pawn into the d6 instead of, just making it a little more active and a little more menacing. So he played rather reasonably passive, which wasn't exactly the best. Then he moved that knight back to d7, bishop e3, exchange, takes, and f6. Now, it's interesting to see how white got his knight on the g4, on the h4, which almost seems like a diversion. Like, this is just a move that a lot of people would not like to even think about and say, okay, this is validly just not good. I don't want to have my knight go in there. But then you realize that the move of knight h4 makes a lot of sense. The knight is going to arrive at the f5 spot. It is going to be close enough and immediately or directly input against the opponent's king's position, and it's a very strong control. See, this is actually a powerful thing to do in this position, and this is like a really good idea to see. And like, white is definitely taking the possible shot to attack or threaten versus the opponent's position, which is great stuff. Now, what is black going to do? I mean, you see, black is just having a huge difficulty. I don't know what he's going to go for, but he definitely has a lot to worry. So he played with knight of the c5, and as soon as this move actually happened, then white played with queen e2. Now, that knight on f5 isn't necessarily going to make anything too big. Just, I want you to understand that. The reason why white brings it there is because it creates a huge pressure. And creating a huge pressure against the opponent is the first and most important thing you care about when you get yourself in such a situation. What white does is awesome. It's a brilliant spot for that knight to attack. It's the black king that has basically nowhere to go or nothing to do. and it is a lot of other things too. So castles and a4. Now, an outpost basically is a square for a piece that it can't be easily reached out, threatened, or pushed away from. I mean, it probably could, but that's going to create huge vulnerabilities in the other side's position. Exactly what we have with that knight out there. There is no easy way on how black could deal with it. If he plays g6, likely his f6 pawn is going to fall. But the most interesting part is that white's knight is keeping that incredible tension that doesn't let black to come out. So it's very good to realize the strength, the power of such pieces. Now white creates a second outpost in this position, which is more than just a beautiful idea. The knight stepping onto the d5. In case black takes it, white will recapture, opening up and attacking on the e. So black has not just one single problem. He's got a multiple amount of problems in the position over here. It's a lot of pain that he has to endure. And now remember, the outpost is just the means for it. It does not necessarily give you or bring you the advantage. It does not necessarily deliver anything incredible. It's just when white put it there, he wanted to make sure that black is in this difficult, bad-looking position with more problems and significant issues to worry about. And so that's exactly what happened in the game. Step by step by step, things are going very good. So you know, this is just like that's an effective direction in this type of position. So in fact, after knight takes to the d4, black played bishop b7, and then white does the move of knight to the e6. Now c7 is under a serious attack. He's got to defend with the rook, but then white plays queen h5 check, g6, knight takes f, and you know, that's just actually, this is very important. And you know, the more relevant thing about this position is to see how it all starts by setting up the advanced and good pieces against our opponent, and then gradually, little by little, those pieces transform into something much more. See, it's a very important possibility. The knights, the queen, the weak black king, and the rest of his other bad pieces. It's just a matter of time. And white did it quite beautifully, I have to say. It was great. Well, in fact, after this move, black played this type of position here, and then there was this here, okay, knight takes f8, and then it's just, apparently black has a lot of trouble to worry about, and a lot of things to be concerned of, especially after the move of knight takes to f8. It's great. You know, he definitely had a lot to be worried. So it was great. Knight takes f. In fact, most of black's pieces were pretty bad as this happened, and he couldn't survive it. He couldn't really stand the possibilities out there. So okay, great, good job, great game. I think white got a clear advantage, and you see why outposts are important, what they are. Advanced, strong squares from where your opponent cannot reach out or attack or threaten, as of that matter, any of your pieces. Do you need more? Probably, or probably not. It depends. But it was very beautiful to just do it as white and make it work. So let's have a look at another game that's just as instructive. Now, when I was younger, my dad used to show me this next game and bring me to speed as to how necessary it is to develop fast in the opening. And when I was asking him, okay, so tell me why would I actually want to develop that fast? Can't I just take my advantages and control these or that squares? He brought to me that game to remind me what matters most, and that there is nothing more important than the easy and good development in this type of position, in this kind of game. So Paul Morphy, one of the best American chess grandmasters, was playing white versus Duke Carl and Count Isort. If I'm pronouncing the names well, actually it was a super interesting game that I think you can learn a lot from. Let's just take a look and see what happened. after the moves of e4, e5, knight f3, black played with d6. And after that move, white did the move of pawn up to the d4. So now black played bishop g4. Now, instead of developing normally with knight c6 to support the center and make something good and decent, black sort of jumps in with his bishop, pins on the knight on f3, and says, you know what, I'm going to try and attack you. And that is almost just like that. Like, just put in there, let's get the bishop forward, let's pin the knight, and let's attack in the center. No preparation is added, no development, nothing. Just the bishop is moved forward, and he's trying to prove himself successful. Now, I don't need to remind you that a strategy of that kind most often fails. And one of the reasons is because, you know, one cannot just put his pieces in the air and say, all right, whatever, I'm good to go, I'll do this. You know, preparation is necessary, development is necessary, and black is not having it. So the fact that he's moving the bishop on g4 means nothing than just one nice looking bishop moving. And then white played d takes 3. Bishop takes f, queen takes f, takes, and bishop c4. So pretty much the idea at this point is that white is moving forth. He is attacking against the f7, and he's ultimately going to start advancing in different ways. What is great about that, and we have a nice tactic against the f7. We have the queen coming through as well, and it was beautiful. What matters is to take the initiative. When you are ahead in development, there are a lot of things that can go bad. Now, you shouldn't miss the spot. What I'm saying is fight for the attack. Fight for the initiative. Fight for the possibility to follow up with. So this is very, very important. Now, if you can make it that way, you are going to just make sure you take and you lead through with what you need. So what's happening? Black defends. He says, okay, I don't care. I'm going to just get my pieces out and you wouldn't find a way to breach me. Did that happen? Well, yes, in a way that was his plan, and he almost got it. However, the problem is that white has more threats, like the f7 and b7 being attacked. He's got the knight development, and you see, even if you don't necessarily have the chance to punish your opponent, okay, what I need you to understand is that on many occasions you can simply keep him in the backside, keep him in the bad position, and just develop your pieces. The fact is that white sacrifices at the proper moment where everything is in place, because he knows that the moment black captures, there's bishop takes b5, and now long side castles. I just want you to look and see the domination of every single piece. The domination of white's rook, 2 bishops, the queen that's near, the rook, and probably even the other one. When you have an incredible position of that kind, you basically need just one thing, and that is to open and find a breakthrough opportunity. It's not easy, but if you look at the forcing moves, you'll likely see that pretty quick. The move of rook takes to the d7 just destroys the black knight. That was one of his best guardians, as a matter of fact, I like to say. And without it, like after rook takes d7, and then rook to the d1, without it, black is really dead. Like, he has no way to defend the d7. He's got no chance to protect anywhere else. So white is able to bring over his pieces and just attack. I don't know what black had in mind, and I don't really think it even matters. It's just the fact is white is killing. Knight takes to b5 plus long side castles plus rook takes d7 just show, and the final combination illustrate really well the power of the successful development. Finally, I'd like to show you how important it is to consider attacking the kings. I mean, in many occasions you could see an opening known as, for example, French or some other like system of this kind, where basically the main goal is to develop your pieces and advance against the opponent. Now let's suppose a black plays like that. There, check, knight c3, he brings out the knight, castles. Now, why am I showing you this? Because you need to understand when and how to recognize a weakness. The Greek gift combination is one of the most popular tactics that show the potential weakness. A potential weakness is not necessarily a big weakness you can go after, but something that is rather weak or vulnerable and you'd love to attack or target it. Like in this case, we realize that the biggest weakness that black has happens to be near the king's side because he doesn't have any pieces there. And so that gives white a chance to attack. I want you to consider forcing moves as the best way to exploit an actual weakness by your opponent. Whenever you notice an actual vulnerability or a weakness or a target of some kind, you may want to consider those forcing moves as a chance because they could help you to break him down. That knight now comes down to g5, and as the black king goes back, white plays queen h5 with a checkmating threat on h7. The king is down, the rest of his pieces are bad, and white is actually winning. In fact, black may try to escape in some ways, but then after queen takes f7, king h8, a check from the h5, and then maybe even a move like rook to the d1 that will help white to just bring some more pieces in place are just impossible for black to stop. That rook is going to come down, and the checkmating threats come in extremely quick. It's great for white and very successful to play like that. So those are just some of the principles that you have to remember and keep in mind when playing. I do hope that these suggestions, this advice will help you to do more successfully with your next games. This is International Master Valery Lvov, and have a good time playing.